So children, let's start with chapter 4, what books and burials tell us. Mary in the library. As the bell rang, the teacher asked the students to follow him because they were going to the library for the first time. When Mary stepped inside, she found that the library was much larger than the classroom, and there were so many shelves, all full of books. In one corner was a cupboard filled with large old volumes. Seeing her trying to open the cupboard, the teacher said, "That cupboard has very special books on different religions. Did you know that we have a set of the Vedas?" Now, what are the Vedas? Mary wondered. Let us find out. One of the oldest literary sources in the world. You may have heard about the Vedas. There are 4 of them: the Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. The oldest Veda is the Rig Veda, and it was composed about 3500 years ago. The Rig Veda includes more than 1,000 hymns called Sukta or well said. These hymns are in praise of various gods and goddesses. 3 gods are especially important in Rig Veda. Number 1, Agni, the god of fire; Indra, a warrior god; and Soma, a plant from which a special drink was prepared. These hymns were composed by sages, rishis. Priests taught students to recite and memorize each syllable, word, and sentence bit by bit with great care. Most of the hymns were composed, taught, and learned by men. A few were composed by women. The Rig Veda is an old or Vedic Sanskrit, which is different from the Sanskrit you learn in school nowadays. The Sanskrit and other languages. Sanskrit is a family of languages known as Indo-European, and some Indian languages such as Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri, and Sindhi. Asian languages such as Persian and many European languages such as English, French, German, Greek, Italian, and Spanish belong to this family, Indo-European family. And they are called a family because they originally had words in common. Now take the word Matra, Sanskrit, Ma in Hindi and Mother in English. Did you notice any similarities? Yes. See, the word M and A is the same. Do you notice any similarities? Yes. Now other languages used in the subcontinent belong to different families. For instance, those used in the northeast belong to Tibeto-Burman family. Then Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam belong to Dravidian family, the south spoken languages spoken in the south. And the languages spoken in Jharkhand and parts of central India belong to Austroasiatic family. The books we use are written and printed nowadays. The Rig Veda was recited and heard rather than read because it was not written down at that time. It is just written down several centuries after it was first composed, just 200 years ago. How historians study the Rig Veda? Historians, like archaeologists, find out about the past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. So let us see how they study the Rig Veda. Some of the hymns in the Rig Veda are in the form of dialogues. This is a part of one such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra and 2 rivers, Beas and Satluj, that were worshipped as goddesses. Now you can locate on the map the rivers Beas and Satluj. And then let's first study this image. This is a page from a manuscript of the Rig Veda. This manuscript of the Rig Veda is on a birch bark, and I will explain you what is birch bark after the next paragraph. And this was found in Kashmir. About 150 years ago, it was used to prepare one of the earliest printed texts of the Rig Veda, as well as an English translation. It is now preserved in a library in Pune, Maharashtra. And now this is the dialogue which we were discussing on the last page. A hymn, a dialogue between a sage Vishwamitra and 2 rivers. So Vishwamitra, "O rivers, come down from the mountains like 2 swift horses, like 2 shining cows that lick their calves. You move like chariots through the sea. Through the power of Indra, you are full of water and wish to unite with one another. Then the rivers say, we who are full of water move along the path the gods have made for us. Once we start flowing, we cannot be stopped. Why do you pray to us, O sage? Vishwamitra, O sisters, please listen to me, the singer who has come from a distance with his chariots and carts. Let your waters not rise above our actors so that we can cross safely. The rivers, we all listen to your prayers so that you can cross safely. Now historians point out that this hymn was composed in the area where these rivers flow. They also suggest that the sage lived in a society where horses and cows are valued animals. That is why the rivers are compared to horses and cows. Now, do you think chariots were also important? Yes, chariots were also important because because during that time, due to very early years, the chariots, the bullock carts were the only mode of transport used. Now, other rivers, especially the Indus and its tributaries, and the Saraswati, are also named in the hymns. The Ganga and Yamuna are only named once. Now, the next page, cattle, horses, and chariots. There are many prayers in the Rig Veda for cattle, children, especially sons, and horses. Horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battles, which were fought to capture cattle. Battles were also fought for land, which was important for pasture and for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, such as barley. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people. So this can be a question, why were the battles fought at that time? So this paragraph is the answer to that question. Now some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders. Some was given to the priests and the rest was distributed among the people. Some wealth was used for the performance of yajnas or sacrifices in which offerings were made into the fire. These were meant for gods and goddesses. Offerings could include ghee, grain, and in some cases animals. Now this paragraph is the answer to the question, the wealth which was obtained in these battles, how it was used. Most men took part in these wars. There was no regular army, but there were assemblies where people met and discussed matters of war and peace. They also chose leaders who were often brave and skillful warriors. Words to describe people. Now there are several ways of describing people in terms of the work they do, the language they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities and cultural practices. And this we do nowadays as well. The place people belong to, like someone who belongs from Bihar is Bihari. Someone who belongs from South, we call them Madrasi, right? So let us see some of the words used to describe people found in the Rig Veda. There are two groups who were described in terms of their work. The priests, sometimes called Brahmins, who performed various rituals, and the Rajas. These Rajas were not like the ones you will be learning about later, like the rulers. These were not those people. They did not have capital cities, palaces or armies, nor did they collect taxes. And during that time, generally sons also did not automatically succeed their fathers as Rajas. Now, two words were used to describe the people or the community as a whole. One was the word Jana, which is still used in Hindi and other languages, and the other was Vish. The word Vaishya comes from Vish. Several Vish or Jana are mentioned by name. So we find reference to the Puru Jana or Vish, the Bharata Jana or Vish, the Yadu Jana or Vish, and so on. So these are the three main Janas or Vishes: Puru Jana, Bharata Jana, and the Yadu Jana. Do any of these names sound familiar? Now, sometimes the people who compose the hymns describe themselves as Aryas and call their opponents Dasas or Dasiyus. And these were people who did not perform sacrifices and probably spoke different languages. Now, who were dasas? The term dasa and the feminine dasi came to mean slave. Slaves were women and men who were often captured in war. They were treated as the property of their owners. They were not treated as human beings. They were treated as property, as objects, who could make them do whatever work they wanted. While the Rig Veda was being composed in the northwest of the subcontinent, there were other developments elsewhere. Now let's take a look at some of these. Silent Sentinels, the story of the megaliths. Look at the illustration on the next page. This. This is one of the megaliths. Now what are megaliths? The stone boulders, the huge stone boulders are known as megaliths. Megaliths literally means big stones, and you can clearly see the big stones carved here. These were carefully arranged by people and they were used to mark burial sites. The practice of erecting megaliths began about 3000 years ago and was prevalent throughout the Deccan, South India, in the northeast and Kashmir. Now some important megalithic sites are shown on map 2 on page number 12. While some megaliths can be seen on the surface, other megalithic burners are often underground. Sometimes archaeologists find a circle of stone boulders or a single large stone standing on the ground. So that is the only indication that there are burials beneath. So let us read this. This type of megalith is known as a cyst. Some cysts, like the one shown here, have portholes which could be used as an entrance. Now all the burials have some common features. Generally the dead were buried with distinctive pots which are called black and red ware. Also found are tools and weapons of iron and sometimes skeletons of horses, horse equipment and ornaments of stone and gold. Probably why this was buried, like skeleton of horses, iron and horse equipments, because maybe these people were the owners of these horses. So these were buried along with their burials. Was iron used in the Harappan cities? Yes. And you can see this is the iron equipment found from megalithic burials. Here on the left top is the horse equipment, then below are the axes, and this is a picture of a dagger. Finding about social differences. Archaeologists think that objects found with a skeleton probably belong to the dead person. Sometimes more objects are found in one grave than in another. Then you can find Brahmagiri on map number 2 on page 12. Here one skeleton was buried with 33 gold beads, 2 stone beads, 4 copper bangles and 1 conch shell. Other skeletons have only a few pots. These finds suggest that there was some difference in status amongst the people who were buried. Some were rich, others poor, some chiefs, others followers. Were some burial spots meant for certain families? Sometimes megaliths contain more than one skeleton. These indicate that people perhaps belonging to the same family were buried in the same place or not at the same time. Obviously, when they will die, they will be buried, but they will be buried in the same grave. The bodies of those who died later were brought into the grave through the portholes. I have already told you about the porthole in the image on the last page. Stone circles or boulders placed on the surface probably served as signposts to find a burial site, so that people could return to the same place whenever they wanted to, because it's very relevant that people can forget the exact place. A special burial at Inamgaon. Now it is a site on the river Ghot, a tributary of the Bhima. It was occupied between 3600 and 2700 years ago. Here, adults were generally buried in the ground, laid out straight with the head towards the north. Sometimes burials were within the houses. Vessels that probably contained water and food were placed with the dead. One man was found buried in a large four-legged clay jar in the courtyard of a five-roomed house. And this was one of the largest houses at the site, in the center of the settlement. This house also had a granary. The body was placed in the cross-legged position. So granary is a place where you will keep. It's like a storeroom where you will keep all the things related to the kitchen, the groceries people keep, and all. It was like a storeroom. Do you think this was the body of a chief? Give reasons for your answer. Yeah, I think this was a body of an important person. That is why it was buried in this way. What skeleton studies tell us? Now it is easy to make out that the skeleton of a child from its small size. However, there are no major differences in the bones of a girl and a boy. So you can easily make out that this is a skeleton of a child or an adult, but you can't make out this skeleton is of a man or of a girl or a boy or a man or a woman. Now, can we make out whether a skeleton was that of a man or a woman? Now, they say that sometimes people decide on the basis of what is found with the skeleton, what is found with the skeleton. So, if the jewelry, if jewelry items are found with the skeleton, this is sometimes thought to be that of a woman. However, there are problems with this. Often, men also wore ornaments at that time. So, a better way of figuring out the sex of a skeleton is to look at the bone structure. The hip or the pelvic area of women is generally larger to enable childbearing. These distinctions are based on modern skeleton studies. About 2000 years ago, there was a famous physician named Charaka who wrote a book on medicine known as the Charaka Samhita. There, he states that the human body has 360 bones. This is much larger number than the 200 bones that are recognized in the modern anatomy. Charaka arrived at this figure by counting the teeth, joints and cartilage. Occupations at Imnamgaon. Now what people do here for the living. Archaeologists have found seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas and sesame. Bones of a number of animals, many bearing cut marks that show that they may have been used as food, have also been found. These include cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, ass, pig, sambar, spotted deer, black buck, antelope, hare, and mongoose, besides birds, crocodile, turtle, crab, and fish. So it is very evident that they used to eat almost everything which is available easily, right? There is evidence that fruits such as bear, amla, jamun, dates, and a variety of berries were collected. Now, here we come to the end of this chapter. Thank you.